What would you do if your boyfriend stole $50,000 from your savings?
The champagne tasted like vinegar on my tongue as I stared at the email on my phone, my hand trembling so violently that the flute nearly slipped from my fingers. Behind me, the low murmur of the rooftop bar's Friday evening crowd blurred into white noise, punctuated by the clink of glasses and bursts of laughter that felt like mockery. Sam sat across from me, his perfect smile frozen in confusion, his hand still extended with the velvet ring box I'd pretended not to see him slip into his jacket pocket 20 minutes ago. But I wasn't looking at him. $50,000. Gone. The San Francisco skyline stretched behind him, all glittering lights and false promises, and I realized with a clarity that cut like broken glass that I was looking at a stranger. A beautiful, charming, meticulously constructed stranger who had spent 8 months systematically dismantling my life savings while making me believe I was falling in love. His voice carried that perfect note of concern, the one that had made me trust him when he'd borrowed my car, when he'd suggested we open a joint account for future planning, when he'd convinced me that Marcus was just jealous of our relationship. "Babe, what's wrong?" I set down the champagne glass with exaggerated care, watching the bubbles rise and burst like all my stupid, naive dreams. "Tell me about Pinnacle Ventures," I said, my voice steady despite the earthquake happening inside my chest. Something flickered behind his eyes. So quick I would have missed it if I hadn't spent 3 years as a financial advisor, learning to read micro-expressions during client meetings. It was the look people got right before they lied about their credit card debt or the second mortgage they'd hidden from their spouse. But Sam was better than most. His face rearranged itself into perfect, wounded confusion in less than a second. He reached for my hand across the table, and I let him take it, even though my skin crawled at his touch. "Elena, what's going on?" "The transfer," I repeated, the word tasting like poison. "To an account that doesn't exist, for a company that isn't registered with the SEC. I pulled my hand away and watched him recalibrate, watched the gears turning behind those warm brown eyes I'd traced with my fingertips just this morning. The concerned boyfriend mask slipped, just for a heartbeat, and I saw something cold and calculating underneath. Then he laughed. A warm, slightly embarrassed sound that would have seemed genuine if I hadn't been looking for the lie. "Okay, you caught me." He leaned forward, lowering his voice to that intimate register that had once made my heart race. "The fund is exclusive, invitation only. My mentor from business school connected me, but they required the initial capital transfer before they'd send the official documentation." He gestured to the ring box with a self-deprecating smile. It was a good story, plausible enough, romantic enough. 6 hours ago, I would have believed him. O-Box in Delaware with Sam O'Connor listed as the sole officer. 6 hours ago, I hadn't found the Reddit thread where 3 other women described the exact same investment scheme, the same charming boyfriend, the same vanished savings. "Show me the documentation now," I said. "I don't have it with me. It's at my place. In the safe." "You don't have a safe." I watched his jaw tighten. "But you know what you do have? A pattern. Portland, 2 years ago. Jessica Chen, $35,000. Austin, 18 months ago. Rebecca Martinez, $42,000. The mask didn't just slip this time, it shattered. His face went blank, empty of everything except a cold assessment that made my stomach turn. This was the real Sam, I realized. This flat, calculating stranger who was measuring whether I was a threat or just another mark who'd discovered the con too late to matter. My name in his mouth sounded different now, stripped of affection. You're making a mistake. That money went exactly where I said it did. If you're listening to some jealous ex-girlfriends on the internet, I verified the company registration myself. I stood, and he stood with me, his hand shooting out to grip my wrist. Not hard enough to hurt, but firm enough to stop me. His thumb pressed against my pulse point, and I wondered how many times he'd held me exactly like this, reading my heartbeat while he lied. "Sit down," he said quietly. I pulled my wrist free, and something in my voice must have warned him, because he didn't try to grab me again. "I'm going to the police tomorrow morning. I have copies of everything. The fake company registration, the unauthorized transfers, the testimonials from your other victims." I'd expected anger, maybe threats. What I didn't expect was for him to laugh, a genuine sound of amusement that made my skin prickle with unease. "Elena, sweetheart, you're a financial advisor, not a lawyer. Do you have any idea how hard it is to prosecute financial fraud?" He tilted his head, studying me like I was a particularly interesting puzzle. "I have 8 months of texts from you telling me you loved me. 8 months of social media posts about our relationship. Witnesses who will testify we were planning a life together." The rooftop seemed to tilt beneath my feet, the city lights smearing into streaks, because he was right. I'd wanted to build a life with him. Every text, every photo, every shared moment was evidence of my own stupid, trusting heart. "I'll still report it," I managed. "Sure, and I'll be long gone by the time any investigation gets off the ground." He straightened his jacket, all traces of emotion gone. The man I'd loved, thought I'd loved, had never existed at all. "For what it's worth, you are different from the others. Smarter." He picked up the ring box and slipped it back into his pocket. "The ring's fake, by the way. Cubic zirconia." He walked away, weaving through the Friday night crowd like he owned the world. And maybe he did. Maybe men like Sam always won, always moved on to the next mark, the next city. The next woman stupid enough to believe in love and partnership and shared futures. I stood there until my legs stopped shaking, until I could trust myself to walk to the exit without collapsing, until the humiliation and rage crystallized into something harder and colder. He was right about the police. But he'd made one crucial mistake. He'd underestimated what a financial advisor with a vendetta and a complete paper trail could actually do. The next morning, I woke up on my couch still wearing last night's dress, my phone dead, and my head pounding from the bottle of wine I'd killed after getting home. Sunlight slanted through my apartment windows, turning the dust motes into accusing little fireflies. My reflection in the darkened TV screen looked like a stranger. Makeup smeared, hair matted, the kind of devastated that came from having your entire reality rewritten in the space of a single conversation. I wanted to stay there, wanted to call in sick, crawl into bed, and pretend the last 8 months had been a nightmare. But that's what he'd expect. That's what all his other victims had probably done. Retreated into private shame while he moved on, untouchable and unpunished. My phone buzzed to life as I plugged it in. 17 missed calls, 12 texts. I ignored all of them and opened my banking app instead, even though I already knew what I'd find. 82. Rent was due in a week. My car payment in 2. I had about $4,000 in my checking account, and a retirement fund I absolutely could not touch without massive penalties. Sam had stolen more than money. He'd stolen my sense of security, my ability to trust my own judgment, my faith that good things could happen to people who tried to do everything right. I was 31 years old, a successful financial advisor who helped clients make smart decisions every single day, and I'd been played like an absolute fool. The anger that had sustained me last night threatened to collapse into something darker. Shame, self-loathing, the crushing weight of my own stupidity. But then my phone rang again, and this time I answered. Marcus's voice was tight with worry. "I've been trying to reach you all night. Are you okay?" "Define stupid," I said, my voice hoarse from crying, like confronting him alone, like not going to the police immediately. I laughed, a brittle sound that made my throat hurt. "I'm safe. He's gone." The words tasted like failure. There was a pause, and I could practically hear Marcus choosing his words carefully. He'd been my colleague at Silverstein Financial for 2 years, had become one of my closest friends, and had been the only person brave enough to question my relationship with Sam. I'd frozen him out for it, accused him of jealousy, chosen my boyfriend over my best friend like an idiot in a cautionary tale. "I'm coming over," he said finally, "and I'm bringing coffee and those chocolate croissants from the place on Market Street." He hung up before I could protest. I dragged myself to the shower and stood underwater hot enough to hurt, scrubbing at my skin like I could wash away the feeling of Sam's hands, Sam's lies, Sam's perfect performance of love. When I finally emerged, wrapped in my rattiest bathrobe with my hair dripping down my back, Marcus was letting himself in with the spare key I'd given him last year. "You look like hell," he said, setting down a carrier with 2 large coffees and a bakery bag. I attempted a smile that probably looked more like a grimace. Marcus pulled out his laptop and one of the croissants, sliding both across my kitchen counter toward me. "Eat." There's nothing to do. He was right. I can't prove fraud when I voluntarily gave him access to my accounts. I bit into the croissant anyway, the buttery sweetness turning to chalk in my mouth. Marcus's voice was sharp enough to make me flinch. "You're not stupid. You're human." This is what he does. He's a professional predator who targets successful, independent women and exploits their desire for partnership. That's not a character flaw on your part. Maybe not criminally. He opened his laptop and pulled up a spreadsheet I recognized, the file I'd sent him yesterday with every piece of information I'd compiled on Sam. "But you're a financial advisor, Elena." I looked at the spreadsheet, company registrations, bank account numbers, email addresses, phone records I'd subpoenaed using my industry credentials. In my rage and heartbreak last night, I'd been thorough. Obsessively, meticulously thorough. Sam had left a trail, and I'd mapped every step. I asked slowly. "I'm thinking you have documentation on at least 3 other victims." "I'm thinking Pinnacle Ventures is registered as a Delaware LLC, which means it has to maintain a registered agent and file annual reports." Marcus pulled up another window, a financial crimes database I recognized from our compliance training. The idea unfurled in my mind like a blueprint. I couldn't get my money back, not through legal channels, but I could make sure Sam O'Connor's name became synonymous with fraud. I could contact every victim I'd found, compile a dossier that would follow him across the internet, make it impossible for him to charm another woman without her finding the truth within 5 minutes of Googling his name. The SEC has a whistleblower program, I said, my brain starting to work again through the fog of humiliation. You'd need more evidence. Marcus was already typing, pulling up forms and requirements. But Elena, you're a licensed financial advisor. You have access to databases and verification tools most people don't. He'll be gone by then. Maybe, but he's also arrogant enough to think you won't do anything. Arrogant enough to have used his real name, his real social security number on the LLC paperwork. Marcus looked up at me, his expression intent. You want to hurt him? Don't just report him. Destroy his ability to ever do this again. Something cold and determined settled in my chest, pushing out the shame. Sam had counted on me being too humiliated to fight back, too worried about looking foolish to make noise. He'd counted on me folding quietly like all his other victims, taking the loss and the lesson and moving on with my life. But I wasn't just another Mark. I was Elena Ramirez, and I was very, very good at my job. I need to contact the other victims, I said, the ones from Portland and Austin. Marcus turned his laptop toward me, showing me social media profiles of women who look like variations of me, successful, professional, in their late 20s to mid-30s. Sarah Kim in Seattle 3 years ago, Amanda Foster in Denver, 18 months before Portland. Same story, same fake investment scheme, same smooth exit. 5 women. Probably more if we kept digging. A trail of broken trust and stolen futures stretching back years, and Sam just moving from city to city, refining his approach, getting better at the con. I'm going to need to talk to them, I said. I can help with that. Marcus paused, studying my face. Elena, this is going to be hard. You'll have to relive the relationship, document every lie, face exactly how calculated it all was. I thought about Sam's face last night when the mask dropped, thought about the cold assessment in his eyes, the way he'd calculated whether I was a threat. Thought about all the other women he'd done this to, all the futures he'd stolen, all the trust he'd broken for nothing more than money and the thrill of the con. I'm sure, I said. The next 3 weeks blurred into an obsessive routine. I went to work, smiled through client meetings, processed portfolio rebalancing and retirement planning like my own life wasn't a smoking crater. Then I came home and became someone else. A hunter, a collector of evidence, a woman building a case brick by methodical brick. Sarah Kim was the first to respond to my outreach, and we talked on the phone for 3 hours straight. She'd been a marketing director in Seattle when she met Sam, or the man she knew as Sam Brennan, using a slightly different name, but the same face, same charm, same story. He'd taken $38,000 from her for a tech startup investment before disappearing. She'd reported it to the police, who'd done exactly nothing. The shame in her voice when she described how she'd trusted him, how she'd believed they had a future, was a mirror of my own. I thought I was the only one, she said, her voice breaking. I thought I was just stupid, gullible. You weren't stupid, I told her, even as part of me whispered that I was a hypocrite for saying it. He's a professional, she asked, and I heard something fierce beneath the pain. She'd been a software engineer, brilliant and meticulous, and she'd documented everything with the same precision she brought to her code. Rebecca from Austin was harder to reach. She'd deleted all her social media after going public about the fraud, unable to handle the victim-blaming comments and the suggestions that she'd been asking for it. Jessica from Portland was angry, a clean, focused anger that had turned her into an amateur investigator. She'd already filed complaints with the FBI, the FTC, and the Internet Crime Complaint Center. Nothing had come of it, but she'd created a comprehensive timeline of Sam's movements, his patterns, the way he selected victims. Looking at her work was like looking at a serial killer's profile, except the murder weapon was charm and the death was financial. We created a private Google Drive, filled it with bank statements, text messages, photos, incorporation documents, travel records. Built a timeline stretching back 5 years and across 6 cities. Sam wasn't just a con artist. He was prolific, methodical, and terrifyingly successful. He makes about $200,000 a year doing this, Marcus observed one night, looking at our compiled data. Tax-free, of course. For now, I said grimly. The case we were building was thorough enough to publish as a research paper. But Marcus was right. It still wasn't enough for criminal prosecution. What we needed was proof of intent to defraud, evidence that Sam had systematically lied about the investment opportunities, documentation showing the companies he'd used were shells with no actual business operations. That's when I got creative. I'd kept Sam's laptop password. He'd given it to me months ago, back when we were playing house and sharing everything. In case of emergency, he'd said with that perfect smile. He'd probably changed it by now, probably wiped the laptop entirely and sold it. But there is a chance, a small one, that his arrogance extended to his digital security. So I logged into the cloud backup service I'd set up on his laptop as a favor 3 months ago, the one that silently mirrored everything to my own secure server. The backup was still active, still syncing. Elena, Marcus said carefully when I showed him what I'd found. Probably not, I agreed, scrolling through folders of files. Spreadsheets tracking victim names and amounts. Draft emails to other women. Templates for fake investment prospectuses. A folder labeled business that contained incorporation documents for 6 different shell companies across 4 states. I copied everything to an encrypted drive, my hands steady. The final piece fell into place when Jessica sent me a message. I found another victim. She's in Phoenix. Her name was Claire Donovan, and according to her Instagram, she was a successful real estate agent who'd been dating Sam Connolly for 6 months. Her posts were a painful mirror of my own from months ago. Couple selfies with Sam's arm around her shoulders, captions about finding the one, photos of romantic dinners and weekend getaways. She has no idea, Sarah said during our group video call that night. All 5 of us on screen, united by our humiliation and our rage. If we warn her, he'll disappear before we're ready, Amanda pointed out. She deserves to know, Rebecca argued. I thought about Claire, about her bright smile in those photos, about the savings she was probably handing over right now for another fake investment scheme. Thought about the choice between protecting one woman and stopping Sam forever. We warn her, I said finally, but we do it strategically. We wait until we have everything ready. The SEC complaint, the media outreach, the legal documentation. Then we contact her with proof. Give her the choice to participate in taking him down. If she does nothing, that's on her. Jessica asked. I looked at the mountain of evidence we'd compiled, the carefully crafted narrative that showed Sam's pattern across years and states. Looked at the SEC whistleblower form I'd filled out, and the contact information for 3 investigative journalists who specialized in financial fraud. This weekend, I said. The Friday before we launched our offensive, I met Sam for coffee. He'd texted me 3 days earlier, his message a masterclass in manipulation. Elena, I miss you. I know I hurt you. Can we at least talk? I owe you an explanation. I'd shown the text to Marcus, who'd immediately said it was a trap. He wants to see if you're a threat. Good, I'd replied. So I sat in the cafe on a bright November afternoon, watching Sam walk in 15 minutes late with that apologetic smile I used to find charming. He'd cut his hair shorter, traded his usual casual style for a button-down that probably cost more than my monthly grocery bill. Spending my money well, apparently. You look good, he said, sliding into the seat across from me. I kept my voice neutral, my face carefully arranged into the expression of someone still wounded but maybe, possibly, willing to listen. To apologize. He ordered a coffee from the barista, his movements easy and confident. Elena, I panicked that night. I said things I didn't mean. The truth is, I did invest your money. All of it. But there were complications with the fund, regulatory issues I didn't foresee. It was a good lie. Smooth, plausible, with just enough detail to seem genuine. A month ago, I might have even believed it. Now I just studied him like he was a case study in my fraud prevention class. Show me the documentation, I said. Bank statements, fund prospectus, registration with the SEC. His eyes flickered, uncertainty replacing confidence for just a heartbeat. It's all tied up in the regulatory review. I can't access the account until... Until what? Until you've moved on to your next victim? I leaned forward, keeping my voice low and pleasant. I know about Jessica, and Rebecca, and Sarah and Amanda. I know about Pinnacle Ventures and Apex Holdings and all the other shell companies you've used. The mask didn't drop this time. It melted, like wax in heat, leaving nothing but cold calculation behind. I'm a financial advisor. I pulled out my phone and slid it across the table, showing him a photo of our compiled evidence drive. Hundreds of documents organized by victim and date. I know everything, Sam. Where you've been, who you've targeted, how much you've taken. I have bank statements and text messages and incorporation documents. He looked at the phone, then at me, his expression utterly flat. What do you want? Half the money back? I can do that. Call it a settlement. The words surprised me with their truth. I want you to stop. I want you to face consequences. I don't need court. I stood, leaving the coffee untouched. By Monday morning, your name will be synonymous with fraud. Every detail of your operation will be public record. Every woman you've ever dated will see the pattern. He stood too, and for the first time, I saw something like genuine emotion in his face. Anger, sharp and ugly. No, I said. The mistake was trusting you. I walked out before he could respond, my heart hammering but my hand steady. Behind me, I heard the scrape of his chair, the sharp sound of his palm hitting the table. Good. Let him be angry. Let him feel a fraction of what he'd inflicted on us. Marcus was waiting in his car across the street, recording everything on his phone per our plan. He took the bait, I said, sliding into the passenger seat. He thinks we're just threatening. The SEC accepted the whistleblower complaint this morning, Marcus confirmed, and the FBI opened a preliminary investigation based on the interstate fraud documentation. He pulled out into traffic, heading toward the TV station where we had a meeting with an investigative producer in an hour. I thought about Sam's face in the cafe, the cold contempt in his eyes, thought about all the women he'd hurt and all the ones he would hurt if we did nothing. Thought about my empty savings account and my shattered trust and the long, hard work of rebuilding a life from ruins. No backing out, I said. The story ran on the 6 o'clock news that Sunday. Serial romance scammer targets professional women in multi-state fraud scheme. The Chiron read, as the anchor described the pattern we'd documented. They interviewed Sarah and Jessica, both of whom had agreed to go on camera with their faces obscured. They showed photos of Sam from different cities under different variations of his name. They detailed the fake companies, the stolen money, the trail of broken trust. By Monday morning, it was trending on Twitter. By Tuesday, 3 more women had come forward with their stories. He'd disappeared, of course, cleared out of Phoenix the same day our story broke, leaving Claire with nothing but a fake name and a $45,000 hole in her savings. But disappearing was harder now. Every alias we'd uncovered was flagged. Every photo was in the public domain. Every trick he'd used was documented and shared. "He'll slip up eventually," Marcus said, watching the news coverage from my couch. I wasn't sure I cared anymore whether Sam ever faced criminal prosecution. What mattered was that his con was over. Every woman who searched his name would find the truth. Every city he tried to operate in would have warnings circulating. We'd built a wall of information around him, a digital scarlet letter he could never escape. The FBI agent working the case called me 2 weeks later. "Ms. Ramirez, I wanted to update you on the investigation. We've issued a federal warrant for Sam O'Connor's arrest on charges of wire fraud and identity theft." "That's good," I said, surprised by how little satisfaction I felt. The victory was hollow, purchased with humiliation and pain. "There's more. Based on your documentation, we've been able to identify a pattern that goes back nearly a decade. You weren't his first victim, Ms. Ramirez." The agent paused. "I know that might be hard to hear, but I want you to know what you did, compiling this evidence and bringing these women together, that's what broke the case." 23 women. The number sat in my chest like a stone. 23 times he'd played this game, refined his approach, stolen futures. And I'd been the one to finally say enough. I asked, already knowing the answer. "Unlikely. He's spent most of it, and what's left is hidden in offshore accounts we're still tracking. Restitution in fraud cases is..." She sounded genuinely apologetic. After we hung up, I sat in my apartment looking at the stack of bills on my counter. I'd had to get a loan from my parents to cover rent, had to cancel the vacation I'd been planning, had to recalibrate my entire financial future around a $50,000 hole that would probably never be filled. But I'd also built something. The victim support group we'd created had grown to include 40 women, not just Sam's victims, but survivors of other romance scams who'd found our story and reached out for help. We shared resources, warned each other about red flags, helped each other rebuild our ability to trust. I'd turned my greatest shame into something that mattered. My phone buzzed with a text from the group chat. "Sarah, They caught him. Phoenix police arrested him at the airport trying to board a flight to Mexico. It's over. 2 words that should have felt like victory, but mostly just felt like exhaustion. I'd spent 2 months consumed by this, by the need to stop him, to make him pay, to transform my humiliation into action. And now what? Now I had to figure out how to live a life that wasn't defined by revenge. Marcus came over that night with champagne and Thai food, and we sat on my couch watching the arrest footage play on the news. Sam in handcuffs, his head down, none of his usual charm visible. Just a man who'd finally run out of places to run. Marcus asked. Tired, I admitted. Empty. You just took down a serial con artist who'd been operating for a decade. I picked at my pad thai, not hungry, but going through the motions. I keep thinking about all the time I wasted. 8 months of my life, gone. $50,000 I'll probably never see again. And for what? He didn't even actually like me. Marcus set down his food and turned to face me. Elena, you were targeted by a professional predator who spent years perfecting his craft. The fact that you survived it, that you fought back, that you turned it into something that helped other people, that's not nothing. It doesn't feel extraordinary. Yeah, he smiled. I wanted to laugh, but it came out more like a sob. The relief and exhaustion and grief I'd been holding at bay for weeks finally broke through, and I cried. Not pretty tears, but ugly, shaking sobs for the trust I'd lost and the innocence that was gone, and the version of myself who'd believed in love without suspicion. Marcus held me through it, didn't try to fix it or minimize it or rush me through the grief. Just let me fall apart, and promised I wouldn't have to put myself back together alone. 6 months later, I stood in front of a conference room full of financial advisors at an industry conference, my slide deck showing the exact pattern of Sam's fraud and the red flags I'd missed. Romance scams cost Americans $304 million last year, I told the audience, and the victims are often the people you'd least expect. Educated, financially savvy, professional. Because these scams don't target stupidity. I'd turned the worst experience of my life into a speaking career, written articles for financial publications about fraud prevention, consulted with the FBI on other cases. The Victim Support Group had become a nonprofit organization with actual funding and resources. We'd helped over 100 women recover from romance scams, connected them with legal resources and financial counseling, and just the knowledge that they weren't alone in their shame. Sam was awaiting trial on 16 counts of wire fraud across 4 states. The prosecutors were confident about conviction. My documentation had been that thorough. I'd probably have to testify eventually, face him across a courtroom, but I wasn't afraid anymore. He'd taken enough from me. He didn't get my fear too. My savings account was slowly rebuilding. My parents had forgiven the loan, called it an early inheritance. I'd started dating again, carefully, skeptically, with background checks and references and a healthy dose of paranoia. It wasn't the same as before. Couldn't be, but maybe that was okay. Maybe wisdom was worth the price of innocence. The conference attendees asked questions after my presentation, wanted to know about warning signs and prevention strategies, and how to help clients who'd been targeted. I answered everything honestly, didn't hide the parts where I'd been gullible or the mistakes I'd made. Because the truth was, it could happen to anyone. Smart people fell for smart cons. Love made fools of everyone eventually. Afterward, a young woman approached me, her hands twisting nervously. "Ms. Ramirez, I think something similar is happening to me." I sat down with her in the empty conference room and listened to her story, heard the familiar patterns, saw the warning signs I'd once ignored, gave her resources and contacts and the phone number for our support group, watched her leave with her shoulders straighter, her eyes clearer, armed with knowledge and the understanding that her instincts were right. This was the real victory, I realized. Not Sam in handcuffs or seeing his face on the news. Not even the money or the justice or the closure. The real victory was using what he'd done to me to make sure other women didn't have to learn the same lessons the hard way. That night, I got a message from Sarah. "Claire just joined the group. Said you told her about us." Claire, the woman in Phoenix we'd warned too late, who'd lost $45,000 and her faith in love. She was joining us, becoming part of our strange sorority of survivors. The circle was complete. I looked at my apartment, smaller than it used to be, in a cheaper neighborhood, with secondhand furniture that would have made the old me cringe. But it was mine, paid for with money I'd earned, filled with friends who'd proven themselves in the fire. I'd lost a lot to Sam's con, but I'd gained something too. Strength, purpose, the knowledge that I could be broken and still get up, that I could be humiliated and still fight back, that justice wasn't always about punishment. Sometimes it was about making sure the next person didn't have to face the same battle alone. My phone buzzed with a text from Marcus. "Dinner tomorrow? I'm buying." I set down my phone and looked at my reflection in the darkened window. The woman looking back wasn't the same person who'd sat in that rooftop bar with champagne and dreams 6 months ago. She was harder, wiser, scarred but not broken. Sam had tried to steal my future. Instead, he'd given me a purpose. And in the end, that was the best revenge of all.